Hello and welcome back for another episode of Stirring It Up with Tia Monique, Kitchen Table Talk. In today's segment of political news, we have Hassan and Dr. Cornell West sitting at the table to discuss Obama, Trump, the Republicans, and much more. Let's sit back and enjoy and talk about it on the other side.
Dr. Cornell West himself. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, my dear brother, for having me. You've been doing a wonderful job. Wonderful job, my brother.
Well, appreciate that. So I want to talk to you about Biden's appointments and his agenda. But before I get to that, can I just double check? This year, you didn't go third party, did you? You voted for Joe Biden for the Democrat for president.
Part of an anti-fascist coalition, a coalition that said we've got to get Brother Trump out. He's a neo-fascist gangster. He calls into question the very possibilities of any kind of democratic politics. Looks like that coalition did come together. He's on the way out, we hope. And now we've got to deal with the neoliberal disaster of Biden and Harris. And we've got to be very honest about it. I think they're going to be much better in terms of stability. But the rot is still there. Remember that wonderful line in Shakespeare's Hamlet? Something is rotten in the state of Denmark. Something is rotten in the United States. The greed and the corruption. And I think Biden and Harris can redirect the rot, maybe slow down the rot, but the greed will still be there. The big money will still be there. The benefactors, the donors will still be there. The mass incarceration system will still be in place. The Pentagon militarism will still be expanded. We've already seen that now in the Middle East, AFRICOM and Africa and so forth. So we got to just tell the truth. We've got to be committed, brother. And you know, as a journalist, to the truth. And the condition of truth is to allow suffering to speak.
Yeah.
We got to be committed to justice. So it's not a matter of identity. You got an all-women group. Yeah. Women can lie just like men. Black people can lie just like white people, like brown people, and indigenous people. So it's integrity.
I want to come back to that.
It's solidarity. That's what we're concerned about.
I'm going to jump in, Dr. West. I want to get into that with you. I want to get into that with you. You've jumped ahead to my next question. But before we get to that, a great point you're making there. Before we get into that important discussion, just to finish off this point, your critics would say, yay, well done, congratulations for being part of an anti-fascist coalition in 2020. Why weren't you part of that anti-fascist coalition in 2016? Do you regret your vote in 2016? Did you just not realize how bad Trump would be?
I thought that maybe there would be stronger mechanisms of accountability for Trump. I really did. And I didn't even think that Trump would win. And I thought that by supporting Clinton, that it was just a matter of trying to generate a longer, deeper left opposition, because I didn't think that Trump was going to win. I thought Hillary was going to win no matter what. And I'm in the state of Massachusetts, so you know that was going to go for Sister Hillary no matter what anyway, very much so.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, if Hillary ran,
let's talk about
this time, I would have supported her. I would have supported Hillary this time, as much as I'm critical of her. Because that's part of the anti-fascist coalition.
Fair enough.
Absolutely.
Fair enough. No. I totally understand where you're coming from in terms of anti-fascism. Let me ask you this. Let's talk about the people Biden is appointing. You just touched on an important issue. They're very qualified, clearly very clever, especially compared to the current bunch they're replacing. They're also very diverse. For example, Fox News is reporting that Biden might select former CIA veteran Darrell Blocker as his new CIA director. He would be the first black man to run the CIA, and he would be working directly under the first woman to be director of national intelligence, Avril Haines. In addition, you've got the first all-female White House communications team, as I just mentioned, the first female Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen. She's one of 4 women on Biden's top economic team, including a former Princeton colleague of yours, African-American economist Cecilia Rouse, who will run the Council of Economic Advisors. Now, they're all undeniably groundbreaking firsts. But some on the left say, no, it's meaningless identity politics, a distraction from their views, from their ideology. Where do you stand on this?
Well, I would say it's not meaningless. It's significant to have a variety of different kinds of people on the inside. But it's not their racial or gender or sexual orientation or identity that is the major marker. I want to know what kind of integrity they have. I want to know what kind of analysis and vision they have. I want to know what kinds of concerns do they have for poor people. Yeah, I'm part of the legacy of Martin King, brother, till the day I die. And poor people, working people, no matter what color. Not just here, but around the world, in Ethiopia, in West Bank, in Gaza, in Tel Aviv, in Guatemala. This is a spiritual and a moral matter. That's why when Shakespeare talks about rottenness, he's saying that the corruption and the greed cuts much deeper than just identity politics. It's a human thing. And that's why predatory capitalism, that's why militarism come out of the Pentagon. These are not PC categories. These are actual realities that are crushing precious human beings of all colors. And if we lose the moral and spiritual standards in talking about identity, then we're going to end up with just a more diverse empire, a more diverse predatory capitalism, a more diverse patriarchal orientation, because, you know, women can fit into patriarchal identity quickly in the same way black folk can fit into white supremacist one. So that I never say it's meaningless. I do want to see diversity, but I want to see diversity at the deeper moral and spiritual level of concern with poor and working people.
I think that's very well put. I mean, people forget Donald Trump appointed a woman to run the CIA. It doesn't mean that the CIA was suddenly a progressive institution overnight. Let's talk about economics, a subject close to your heart: the state of the economy, poverty, inequality. The New York Times had a headline today. We'll put it on screen. Quote: Biden's economic picks suggest focus on workers and income equality. There is good news in there for progressives, isn't there? People like Cecilia Rouse, who I mentioned, and Jared Bernstein, they have strong progressive economic records.
Well, I mean, Cecilia Rouse might be a sister. As you know, she's the daughter-in-law of the one and only Toni Morrison, you know, the greatest literary artist of our day. I have great respect for her mind, but keep in mind, she was part of the same Lawrence Summer-dominated council under Obama. Now, I don't know exactly where her voice was, but she strikes me still as very much in a neoliberal zone. She could be changing. I know recently she's talked about a call for serious relief. So I want to give people a chance.
Yes.
But I like that verb suggest, because we got to see what kind of priorities are they really going to have. Janet Yellen is trained by Joseph Stiglitz. Joseph Stiglitz is one of the most important progressive economists around. Will she be able to deal with that Stiglitz, James Tobin legacy she got from Yale, or will she fit right into the Biden neoliberal project? We don't know. We shall see with our dear sister.
Yeah.
I want to give her a chance, but I'm going to be putting pressure on her, not in a personal way, but in a principled, moral, spiritual, and political way, because the rot, the greed, the indifference toward the suffering of poor and working people of all colors in America can keep alive the fascist movement. That's what keeps alive the Trumpism. It's not just Trump himself, but so many of the folk, they're looking for some alternative to the inequality, and here comes Trump, Pied Piper, in his own way, to provide this kind of...
Also, there's this issue where I worry that the bar is so low. Anyone who's not Trump or not Mnuchin or not Ben Carson is suddenly amazing. I think we need to raise the bar on what we expect from our officials. On that note, let me ask you about the most controversial name floated so far. About a day ago, it was rumored that Rahm Emanuel might be the next transportation secretary. But as the mayor of Chicago, of course, he's been accused of covering up key elements in the investigation into the police killing of Laquan McDonald, a black teenager, only releasing a damning video of the shooting after a court ordered it. How bothered would you be by the appointment of Rahm Emanuel to Biden's cabinet?
Well, Brother Rahm, I've been a foe of his for decades, not only because of his cover-up of Brother Laquan, but again, his neoliberal politics. I mean, we know from Brother Barack Obama's new book, or Promised Land, where it ends up Barack gets to the Promised Land. It doesn't take a whole lot of folk with him, as it were. But it's clear that it was Rahm Emanuel who was pushing the centrist neoliberal policies that would not speak to the depths of the crisis and catastrophe on Wall Street, and allowed for the Wall Street gangsters to get off free, the Wall Street criminals to get off free, and then the policy of providing the trillions of dollars to those Wall Street folk, the very criminals who had caused the crisis, benefit. So that's not just a matter of race here. We're talking about economic injustice tied to Brother Rahm, and he's got to take responsibility for that. So yes, I'd be very upset. But it's not just Rahm. It's just there's a whole array of those moderate neoliberals who constitute the corporate wing of the Democratic Party. That was not fair to my brother Bernie Sanders, but I know that's over now. But we have got to be vigilant, individually in our voices and collectively on the street. Biden and Harris, we shall see. It's suggesting that you're going to deal with some inequality and poverty. Let us see in execution.
I want to come back to you and Bernie Sanders in a moment, but just sticking with the Biden team, most of these names, these appointees, are veterans of the Obama administration, which I know you had high hopes for. You campaigned for back in 2007, 2008. You supported Barack Obama's campaign. You said you hoped he would be a black Lincoln. By 2011, you had called him, quote, a black mascot of Wall Street oligarchs and a black puppet of corporate plutocrats. Obama has his memoir out right now. You just mentioned it. Have you reassessed your view of him, given what came after him? Doesn't 4 years of Trump's impact, doesn't that change the way we see Obama's legacy?
Well, I mean, I've always thought that Brother Barack was a brilliant brother. He's a highly poised brother. Sister Michelle is magnificent. The two wonderful, wonderful daughters, too. But my assessment of Brother Barack is even worse now when I look at the book, because he tries to engage in rationalizations of his captivity to Wall Street greed, the rationalizations to Pentagon militarism. Where is the wrestling with assassinating American citizens with that killer list every Tuesday with no due process? He said, if a Republican did that, New York Times would go 8. Barack does it, nobody wants to say a word. Where's the moral consistency? Same was with drones. I thought he was going to say something about how he felt as if he could come to terms with drones. Bush, 45 drones, war crime. Barack Obama, 563 drones, three drones, war crime. I call him, I'm just being consistent. I said the same thing about Bush, I say about him. I'll say the same thing about Trump, even worse. We'll say the same thing about Biden. It's a matter of being morally and spiritually consistent here. And so the book actually reveals even more a confirmation and even almost vindication of what so many of us were trying to say. And I'm not the only one, as you know. Adolph Reed has been saying this, and Brother Matt Diaby, and Chris Hedges, and Naomi Klein, and Noam Chomsky, and Paul Street. I mean, I'm not the only one. Glenn Ford, Black
Let me ask you this.
Jumu
One of the
Barack,
things Obama was so worried about.
You say what?
Indeed. Let me ask you this. One of the things Obama was so worried about, and what Biden has been so concerned about this year, was being tagged as a socialist, the dreaded S word. You're a proud democratic socialist. Why do you think so many Americans recoil from that word? You even had House Democrats blaming socialism for down ballot losses this year in places like Florida.
I mean, there is a association of socialism with the Soviet Union, association of socialism with repression and regimentation. And so you understand that kind of misunderstanding. It's sad that is still often something that's taken place, but the kind of democratic socialism I'm talking about was the ways in which Helen Keller was a democratic socialist, the way in which John Dewey was a democratic socialist, the ways in which Reinhold Niebuhr was a democratic socialist, the ways in which Martin Luther King Jr. was a democratic socialist. That has nothing to do with Soviet Union. Has nothing to do with repression, nothing to do with regimentation, but in the minds of most people when they say socialism. And for me, it's not really about an ism, just like I was telling Brother Tucker, that as a Christian, I'm just trying to bear witness to a truth and justice that has to do with the least of these, the poor, the persecutor. It has to do with the genius of Hebrew scripture, that spreading of hesed, that loving kindness to the orphan and widow and fatherless and motherless, and that includes structures. The Jesus that I follow went straight into the temple and ran out the money changers. Well, what was the temple of that day? It was a huge place. It was Hollywood, Harvard, White House, Pentagon, that's where the temple was. To run out the money changers, those who had idols that overlooked the humanity of the weak and the vulnerable. That's why Jesus was crucified, because he ran the money changers out of the temple. So that's Wall Street, that's White House, that's Pentagon, that's Hollywood, that's Harvard, that's Yale, even a little Oxford, brother. even Christchurch, Oxford, where too many of the elites are shaped and molded and don't have enough concern with the bottom. But not all. Not all. Not all. There's some who make it through Oxford.
Someone's been Googling me. Let me ask. We're almost out of time. I've got to ask you an important question before we run out of time. You've been a lifelong opponent of racism, of white supremacy. We saw the Black Lives Matter movement go mainstream in America this year. Majority support from the public for the first time. But what happens now to Black Lives Matter? Will a President Biden, like a President Obama, make people think racism and police brutality is a thing of the past? How do you keep people energized?
Keep people energized by connected to the best. That's what Sankofa is. And what is connected to the best? Martin Luther King Jr., who said you got to always highlight 4 issues: poverty, militarism, racism, and materialism, and thinking you can possess your soul by means of possessing commodities. So that when we talk about Black Lives Matter, it's always in the context of the struggle against poverty, the struggle against all forms of xenophobia, not just racism, but sexism, not just sexism, but homophobia and transphobia, anti-Jewish ideology, anti-Palestinian ideology, anti-Arab, anti-Muslim ideology, and then always connected to some alternative to a system obsessed with profit making at any cost that produces a culture in which people think they can do anything to the weak at any cost. And that includes on a global scale. That includes nations right across the board. It could be Ethiopia, it could be Israel. They think they can do something and get away with it without any moral standards, without any spiritual standards. We have got to bear witness through voice, through movement.
Well said. I think we're going to leave it there on that very uplifting, inspirational note. Dr. Cornell West, thank you so much for your time. You're always welcome back on the show. We appreciate you.
All right, everyone, we're going to end it on that note. How did you enjoy today's episode of Stirring It Up with Tierra Monique and Dr. Cornell West? I think that he is an intriguing, intelligent man, and wow, I'm just so impressed. What do you guys think? Please leave your comments below. And if you did enjoy this video, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe to become a friend. Until next time, and there will be a next time, be good. Bye.